Here we go with yet another application problem, and this one says the table shows the earnings for the Owens family last year, and the circle graph shows how they spent their earnings. So we're going to use this to answer our questions. Okay, here's their table that has each month and their monthly income or their monthly earnings. And then whenever they figured up all their expenses, they figured up that 5/16 of their money was spent on food, 1/5 of their expenses were spent on rent, and 1/4 was spent on taxes, and so on and so forth. Okay, our first question here says find the Owens family's total income for the year. Well, keep in mind these are their incomes for each one of those months. So if we're going to find their total income, that's telling us to add these things together. Now, this is a list of 12 items, so you could either list them all out, in a single, columns setting, and then add them together. Or, you could make it a little bit easier on yourself and just add this column. And when we do that, we will get, when we add these things together, we should get 27,623. You can double check my math there just to make sure that that's correct, but I believe that's correct. Then we could add together this column also, and we should get 30,377. Now we could add those two together, so that made it a little bit nicer. We didn't have quite so many numbers to deal with in a single list. So now if I add those two things together, we get 7 and 3 would be 10, 7, 8, 9, 10, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 7 and 1 is 8, and 2 and 3 would be 5. So it looks like their total income for the entire year was $58,000. Now let's see what they want us to do. Now it says find the amount of their rent for the year. Well, if we go back up here and look at our chart, it says that they spent 1/5 of their earnings on rent. So think about what we just said there, 1/5 of their earnings. Let me write that out. 1/5 of their earnings is what they spent on rent. Well, if you'll remember, 1/5 of means 1/5 times. And their earnings we just found in the previous problem to be 58,000. So we would want to multiply by 58,000, which is their total earnings. And because this is a whole number and we'd really like to see the fractions, let's put that over 1 so we can see the numerator and the denominator. And then we will begin to cancel. Now, here I'll bet 5 goes into 58,000 because it ends in a 0. So we could do our division, say 58,000 divided by 5, so that would go in one time. 5 times 1 is 5. Drop your next digit. 5 goes into 8 one time. 5 times 5 is 1. 5 times 1 is 5. Subtract. Drop down your next digit. 5 goes into 36 times. Now we have 0, but we have to continue doing something for these zeros here at the end. So each one of those will be zeros. 5 goes into 5 one time. It goes into 58,11600 times. So when we multiply these together now across the top, we've got 1 times 11,600, which is 11,600. And on the bottom we have 1 times 1, which is 1. Now remember, we don't really have to put a denominator of 1. We can just leave that as $11,000 spent on rent.